Hey there, we're just waiting for a couple folks to show up. Guys, we're almost ready to start. We're just trying to work out some technology challenges, still having them in 2023. All right. I think, yep, we have quorum. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Equity Committee meeting for the Council on Homelessness. It's recording. All right, great. Hey, Pat.
Hi.
All right, let me just get the slides up. We are just getting started.
Yes. Oh, sure. Thank you.
All right, let me just get this. Come on. All right.
Yes.
Okay, I think we are ready to rock and roll. So you're not going to be able to see me because I'm having tech issues and I can't log on to the other computer. So I'm going to be the disembodied voice. Jamie Jeanette with Health, Housing, and Homeless Services. Today we are at the Equity Committee meeting, and no, you're fine. You can make noise. Want to make sure, let me just make sure real quick that we are, okay, we're recording. Everybody can hear us, I'm hoping. That's in the far reaches of the internet. Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. Let me just get this up. This keeps going to this weird presenter mode, but okay. So we are having such issues. Okay, hold on one second. Let me try something else. Stop sharing. I don't know what is happening today. All of the technology is deciding to misbehave. Okay. And okay. Okay. Welcome.
Without changing on. I think, are you selecting the window when you're screen sharing?
I'm selecting Zoom. I mean, hold on. Screen share, I'm selecting the committee slides. Okay, because if I do it as, I might have to have you share the screens, share the slides. Sorry, guys. This is classic technology. Okay.
That's fine.
Never. Okay, so for those of you who are logged in, are you seeing this on your screen or you're seeing something different if you're logged in?
Something different.
Okay, well. Sorry, give us a minute.
Will you, not,
Oh yeah, I need to make you a
Share.
co.
no, I think I can share, but will you try, exiting out of the screen share?
Yeah, I thought I did. What is happening? Okay, hold on. Sorry, guys, all of our computers are freaking out.
And then, okay, can you share screen?
Yep. Sorry, y'all, just give us a minute. So if I go to share screen, before I was saying,
What happens when you just?
oh,
select
oh,
screen?
there we go. Let's try PowerPoint. That's, I think, maybe where the challenge was. I've only done this like 30,000 times. I don't know why we're having problems today. Okay, I give up on this.
I think you need to share your screen. You don't-
I know the problem is if I do that, then, well, I guess we'll just try it.
Now we see the presenter mode, but that's better than.
I really don't know what's happening. Just give me 1 second. One participant can share at a time, share screen. It's saying screen 1 and screen 2, and I don't know why that is an option. Let's see what happens if I share screen 2.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
And it moved.
mystery. Alrighty then. Hi. Happy July. Want to just take a quick minute and welcome everyone. We're going to do a quick roll call, especially for council members that are committee members. So we have Janae, Juno, and Leslie in person. And Pat, yes. And Kiva, she was maybe going to attend remotely, but is not. So we've got good in-person attendance. Yay, thank you. And nobody seems to be using their virtual attendance exemption. Okay, we don't need that. Okay, so we posted the minutes in the packet from last time, which is mostly just some notes relating to like key messages. So just want to see if anybody has questions or comments from the minutes. They were posted in the packet. And Jamie, I don't know if you have the ability to drop the packet link in the chat. Thank you. Any thoughts, questions, comments about the minutes? No decisions were made, so. Okay. Because this is a Brown Act covered meeting, we're going to make space for public comment for anything that is not on the agenda. Anybody in this room or on the internet have anything you want to say or bring up? Just a reminder, we can't make any decisions based on any of that. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move forward. Okay. I'm actually, poor Jamie. I'm now going to turn it over to Jamie.
Okay.
To talk about equity definitions, and I can advance the slides as.
Okay. So, go ahead and go to the next
Sure.
slide. So a couple meetings ago, we had talked about, what do we mean when we talk about equity? Does the council have kind of the same definition when all our members are talking about equity and race and all these different terms that we utilize? And so we had proposed some definitions. There was feedback given in the meeting. We're supposed to bring these back to you last meeting, but we ran out of time. It got really condensed. So here we are with the goals to review some of the previously discussed definitions that we've gone over, address updates that were made to them based on feedback we got during the meetings, and then ask you all to adopt these working definitions that we're speaking at one voice. And what we'd be doing in this room is saying, yep, these look good. We're going to ask the full council on homelessness to adopt these definitions based on our recommendation.
Yep.
The next slide. Okay, so this is just one slide. I think I've got 3 or
Mhm.
4 total of definitions. So if you don't see a word on here, it's probably coming. But just gonna go over some of the definitions that we previously talked about for race. Social construct created in the 17th century by white Europeans to justify the enslavement of Africans and the spread of colonialism. Understanding of race as a concept has changed over time, but the outcomes of discrimination based on race remain entrenched in our system. And so what changed after the Martin was there was a quotation in there that it felt a little bit in the middle of the space, so we took it out just for easier reading. Racism, we didn't make any changes. It seemed like folks had agreed during that meeting that this was fitting in the way that we talk about racism, which is a system of institutional systemic oppression and practices of society that shape cultural beliefs and values that support racist policies and practices. And I'll stop after these first 4 to get them. Any thoughts from folks? Racial equity, there was some changes made, but this one we talked about the condition where one's racial identity does not predict their social, health, or economic outcomes. Racial equity is a process of eliminating racial disparities and improving outcomes for everyone. It is the intentional and continual practice of changing practices, systems, and structures by prioritizing the measurable change in the lives of people of color. So there were some components that we adopted from an organization called Race Forward that was built into here. And then a race equity lens is a way of viewing the world in an integrated and holistic manner, taking into account past and present racial injustices and seeking to address them through more equitable practices and structures. So in those first 4, any reactions? Does feel like it's, in a good enough shape to move forward with a working definition of how we're talking about these 4 words?
I'll just add the way I think we're gonna like use them or show them is like right now on the back of our agendas, we have like the acronyms list. And so we might, I think we'll probably post this online, but we may decide that we want to post, and attach it as part of the agenda packets for all the council meetings, the big ones, so that everyone just has that as a reference. In case you're wondering, like, okay, we do this and then like what happens to them? I think that's part of the plan. Yeah.
I really like all the work we've been doing on these. The only thing that comes to my mind that I potentially would change is just a minor tweak of the wording and racism.
Mhm.
And part of it's not like 100% necessary, but part of what I kind of am latching onto is like in practices of society, where it's like I kind of feel like practices exist within like society instead of like maybe like the wording here might be saying that society is doing those practices, but like society is made up of a lot of people. So it's like there's a lot of different practices within that like greater sphere. So maybe like a slight rewording there is the only thing that pops out at me.
Okay.
Other than that, everything seems good and very clear.
And Joe, I saw your hand clap, so I'm taking that as support from the audience as well. Okay, so let me make a quick comment on my PowerPoint there real quick.
Can I jump in there? Jim?
Go for it, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, looking at like the frameworks of racism being systemic, institutional, interpersonal, and interpersonal, does seem like there's an individual level that could be added there, practices of individual and society.
Okay, maybe that. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Ready for the next one?
Next slide. Oh, I think
Is that
that
the
was
right
too far. There you go. Nope, one more, sorry.
Hmm?
Okay, the next
Hold
one
on.
only has 3.
Yeah, I was like, hold on, what's going on?
My bad. Okay, so last meeting we had talked about adding a definition for white fragility. That was a topic of conversation. It wasn't one that we previously brought, but that was something that folks wanted to add. And so here the definition was pulled from Robin DiAngelo, who's the author of the book White Fragility. happy to take edits and adapt it for us, since I know this is the first time folks are seeing it. But white fragility refers to the feeling of discomfort a white person experiences when they witness or engage in discussions around racial inequality and injustice. Their engagement in conversations about racism may trigger a range of defensive actions, feelings, and behaviors, such as anger, fear, and silence. These behaviors function to reinstate white racial equilibrium. Racial bias, I didn't make any updates, leave some feedback here. It is implicit and explicit bias that influence the attitudes and behaviors when interacting with people or situations. And then microaggressions are brief, everyday exchanges that send denigrating messages to certain individuals because of their group membership. So any thoughts to these three terms?
This is Jamie J. I think in the first one, the last sentence feels like it could be more direct or clear. Like, I'm like, I think I know what she's saying. And it's basically, I mean, to me, white racial equilibrium is like a very sort of jargony technical term to me. So I don't know what would be better of like white dominance or I don't know, something. But I'm totally open to other interpretations or suggestions. Oops, crud.
It's like, it's kind of rough draft, but it's like, when it's kind of the idea, I feel is, it's like when somebody is confronted with something that like kind of upsets their beliefs or like upsets how they view the world, it's kind of that reaction, I guess. And so, you know, I think that this is a really jargony way to say it. And also it is like very, this way of saying it makes sense. But like if we wanted to make it less jargony, we could say something about how it is those reactions, like those emotional reactions to those moments. Oops. I guess we already do a bit. We talk about feelings and behavior, anger, fear, and silence, but that's just my initial thoughts.
I'm a little curious.
Oh, Joe, your audio just chopped out. You want to try the chat?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. I'm a little curious about okay, so feelings, yes, feelings. But like Juno was saying, it's more of like a reactionary thing. It is, I think when I was bringing this up to bring this into the discussion of white fragility, that last sentence of reinstating white racial equilibrium, that's the actionary part. I think that's the part that we need to describe. Like it, if that makes sense at all, because just the definition is great, it's needed, but it's that reactionary to those feelings that causes the discomfort. So I don't know, it's more a behavioral health thing than it is it's a mental thing, really. But I don't know.
I wonder if we could say like these reactive behaviors or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is what Joe was saying, especially because there can be the case where somebody feels these feelings and decides not to, or not to act on them, or to just be like, recognize, oh, I'm feeling these feelings, I should listen more. There's like a whole bunch of different cases that happen. So yeah, I feel like we could like expand on that more, like well, this is what white fragility is, and this is what the outcome may happen, you know, an outcome that may happen when, you know, it's not properly recognized or something.
And then that raises my question is if we should have some kind of way to, I mean, we talk about motivational interviews. Is there a way or something that we can pull on that can teach folks how to react to it when somebody is fragile?
That might be a kind of outside of the scope of this activity, but could be a good thing for a training topic or
Yeah.
Oh,
whatnot.
exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with that, is it being a training topic.
And Jill, I see your hand
Mhm.
up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the beginning part of that paragraph, that last sentence doesn't seem to match, because it's really what is white fragility? And I think when you say reinstate white racial equilibrium, you're kind of saying that we are in a state of racial equilibrium, and I don't think we are. And so continue white dominance. I mean, it could be something along those lines, but I think this last sentence, I feel, is a bit, it doesn't to me match the rest of it. The rest is very descriptive about what white fragility is. And I think that the last sentence jumps to the conclusion as to what a person's motivation is when they're experiencing white fragility. And I'm not sure we can jump to that conclusion. There may be a great many reasons why people feel that the things in the first few sentences, if that makes sense. And I don't think that we can ever reinstate white racial equilibrium, because I don't think we're there. I don't think we've got white equilibrium, so there's nothing to reinstate.
How are folks?
Oh,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Leslie. Yeah, I was gonna say, how, on the fly wordsmithing here, how would folks feel if we reworded that last sentence to say these reactive behaviors function to reinforce white dominant culture, and tie it to housing that lead to the disparate outcomes that we see in homelessness? Because these are Council on Homelessness definitions. We're not married to anything that's written up here. How does that make folks feel about that last sentence? Yeah, so these reactive behaviors function to reinforce white dominant culture that lead to disparate outcomes in housing.
My other question would be, why are we doing that, this definition and not all others? I mean, I'm fine with it, and I think you could end the statement that reinforce white dominance.
Yeah.
Or, unearned privileges.
And the only thing I would suggest is add the word is continued into that sentence, Jamie, rather than, just make sure that if we're not facing this, we're continuing the same old kind of thing.
So one more time, make sure I've got it correctly. These reactive behaviors function to reinforce continued white dominant culture.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Let me make sure I write that down.
I do have it recorded, but yes, it's easier now.
Then I don't lose my own place.
Yeah, I feel you.
In the past, when I've heard people discuss this, they've also, in a similar, like different words maybe throw in, they also discuss like sort of maintaining the status quo, this is upsetting it.
Yes.
So, yeah, just other words to
Mhm.
potentially throw in the soup.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else on racial bias or microaggressions before we move on to the last slide?
Yeah, the racial bias part of it real quick. Even the term is racial bias, but the definition isn't a racial like it just says with people or situations, when it should be with people and situations of another culture, another, I don't know, quote unquote race, right? Like, isn't that, or no?
Good question.
I get what she's saying, so maybe implicit and explicit bias that reinforces the racial attitudes and discriminatory behaviors when interacted, so throw those words in there maybe, but I'm not married to that.
I like something along those lines, especially because it, like, if you distinguish, like, if you're saying like people or situations seems vague, but saying like people of a different race is also not exactly correct, because there can be people of the same race,
Yeah.
people with racial bias
Right.
against each other. So I like something like that, where we make it a bit more detailed, but,
I do like the word discrimination. I think that kind of really identifies the difference
Mhm.
in behaviors and attitudes. Let's do one more time for the peanut gallery.
Okay, so taking a cue from today, implicit and explicit bias, that bias that influences the discriminatory attitudes and behaviors. Or just, that influence that support discriminatory attitudes and behaviors when interacting with people, situation. Now I'm making it worse.
It's so hard to do this wordsmithing on the fly.
Implicit and explicit, or and or.
Uh-huh. I think it could be and/or. Mhm.
and you could throw in there reinforces the discriminatory.
Yes,
Attitudes and
yes, that's a
behaviors.
good fix, yes.
I know you're, where does reinforce go?
Discriminatory.
Do you want to share your
attitudes.
screen, Jamie? Is that?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so one more time, and this is me struggling a little bit with like hearing the third grade teacher say, you don't put the word in the
Right.
definition. What I have, the implicit and or explicit bias that reinforces the discriminatory attitudes and behaviors when interacting with people or situations.
Did you have a the before discriminatory?
I did.
I think we can take that out.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because the biases themselves are what, lead to then those lead to making those discriminatory actions feel valid.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to use valid because that's just a word I use too much, but yeah.
Well, and I think for all of this, what I keep trying to remember is like, we have zero control over what people are feeling. People can feel all the ways they want to, but it's about how those feelings influence their actions and behaviors, which leads to these outcomes. So that's the part I always have to go back to in my head. I'm like, you can have all the biased feelings you want. That's like, go enjoy. But when you start to make policies or decisions or treat people a certain way, that's where we get into trouble. So I appreciate that we're talking about behaviors in this.
And then next slide.
Mhm. Oh, come on. Sorry, this is. Right? Did it go through? Oh my gosh. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. And so now these are talking about the layers of racism. So individual racism didn't make any updates from the March meeting, but a person's beliefs and actions that serve to perpetuate oppression. This can be conscious and unconscious. This may be externalized or internalized. Interpersonal racism speaks to the interactions between people, both within and across difference. With institutional racism, pulled in some components from Race Forward again, and these are policies and practices at the organization or sector level that perpetuate oppression. It involves unjust policies, practices, procedures, and outcomes that work better for white people than people of color, whether intentional or not. And we will decapitalize white. I got them all. Structural racism also incorporated some components from Race Forward. And structural racism refers to how these effects interact and accumulate across institutions and across history. Structural racism highlights how racism operates as a system of power with multiple interconnected reinforcing and self-perpetuating components which result in racial inequities across all indicators for success. And then finally, systemic racism, no updates here, but it's an infrastructure of rulings, ordinances, or statutes promulgated, so the word I struggled with, but I couldn't figure out another one there, by a sovereign government or authoritative entity, where such ordinances and statutes entitle one ethnic group in a society certain rights and privileges while denying other groups in that society the same rights and privileges because of long-established cultural prejudices, religious prejudices, fears, myths, and xenophobias held by that entitled group.
Which you promulgated to adopt it.
Oh, that's a good
that might be a little more accessible.
Thanks, Joe. Sorry, I did try and break them up, but yes, we can definitely do more slides with bigger font. Sure. Promulgated to adopted. Any thoughts? What's it?
Two places I think where we need to use specifically the word race or racial.
Mhm.
On the first one, individual racism, a person's beliefs and actions that serve to perpetuate racial oppression,
Yes, thank you.
name it. And then down in the systemic racism, swap out racial for ethnic grouping. Because that's true,
Mhm.
but since we're talking about racism,
While we're on that for interpersonal racism, I think we can tighten that one too.
Oh, yeah, that perpetuates.
Instead of difference, I think race
Yeah.
or race, ethnicity. Or racial and ethnic groups or something. I don't know.
So both the interactions between people both within and across.
But we're talking specific, again, I think your point is well taken about like racial groups. So
Both within and across racial groups.
that, I mean, I don't know, works for me, but.
Anything from the folks in the audience on these different levels of racism that we're defining here?
Mhm.
It's very interesting. It's really interesting to have this information or this, these definitions, and then I wonder about how people who aren't so familiar with this word will look at it and be like, oh, interesting, like
Mhm.
these definitions are similar but different, and it's because they all pile on top of each other, they're all connected intersectionally, so it's like I like this. What do you think about that?
Is there a space for some explanation like that to kind of, like, is there a space to include some of what you kind of summed up in terms of these are layers that are intersectional, because
Mhm.
most won't understand
Mhm.
at that level.
Yeah.
And if you're brand new to the idea, but if there is some kind of disclaimer or some kind of further explanation about how these all kind of interlink,
Mhm.
I think that would be, so I don't know where we could put that, but I think that's important.
Yeah, building on that, it could be like a preamble that gives context and also makes that direct correlation to doing this because it affects housing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think you guys are giving me like the intro to the presentation to the council, so that helps.
Yes.
This is great, thanks, Council.
We'll send you our bill.
So yes, I think that's a great place to include that, and maybe we, give a little intro paragraph at the beginning of the table that we might include in other materials and all of that.
And if you're looking for like a direct example, I always like to use the census as
Mhm.
an example
Mhm.
because it has changed over time, and you can see what was considered a race, and not considered a race, and reconsidered a race. Touches on a lot of these different, probably all of these boxes where it's, yeah. So the census is a great example if you want
Yes.
to like ground it people.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, our HMIS data is a great place too, because all of a sudden, October 1st, we're gonna have Middle Eastern people in our community that were never counted as Middle Eastern before, because HUD finally added that as well.
Well, not only were they not counted as Middle Eastern, they were probably counted as white.
Yeah,
Probably
exactly.
right. Yep,
Reinforcing.
exactly right. So yeah, we can definitely incorporate all of that into the presentation, and I think, we're looking at training to build upon throughout the year, so these are definitions we can share with future trainers, like this is what we talk about when we talk about race equity and all the things that the council works on. Before we move to the action item, Joe, I did see your hand go up. Did you want to add anything, or did cover it?
I'm in between screens so I can read this stuff.
Mhm.
It says that these definitions are incorporated from Race Forward.
Mhm.
Is that a book? What is that?
They are an organization, and I can share the link to their website, but they do a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion, justice work with, particularly with governments, and organizations kind of at that scale. And so they've got a lot of kind of toolkits and resources, and I think they were the resource that Alex had mentioned he had heard about at NAH, so I went through and kind of pulled information from their website.
Was there any other definitions looked into? Because I've got different definitions of these terms, even though they're very similar. In the communities I've worked with, which have been prominently people of color, and the communities have a different style of definition, I guess is what I'm saying. And and looking at these, I'm just going to go back because I can't necessarily make sense of it now, but I'm going to go back into the other definitions that I'm aware of and compare it to these, because I want to make sure that they're, I don't know, these are just different than what I'm used to.
Yeah, I think we pulled the initial definition from the C4 innovations evaluation that was done for our community, because that's where we wanted to do a starting point. And then when we talked about it in March, and we kind of had some ongoing conversation since then, just pulled in kind of thoughts and feedback from the folks who were at that meeting to see how we can work with them, with the knowledge that these are not perfect. They're not going to be perfect at all, and that this committee can continue to, I don't know, semi-annually, annually look at the definitions and see if there's benefit for our community. So now we have an action item. With the updates that I captured in my notes, that will be incorporated before we go to the council. We're looking to ask the equity committee to recommend these working racial equity definitions to the full council on homelessness. Would anyone like to make the motion?
We're gonna move it and then discuss, right?
So Juno made the motion,
I'll second.
Pat seconded. Well, discussion.
Okay, so we all know how well it works to wordsmith things in committees. Like, this is a small group, so, and we've been working together, so we, but does bringing it to the full council on homelessness mean we're gonna go through a whole nother exercise of everybody in the room trying to work?
Hopefully not.
So,
Hopefully
but
not.
does it open the door to that? And if so, what might we need to be prepared for to move the agenda item forward?
So from my perspective, we would ask the council to adopt this. If they don't adopt it, it would come back to the equity committee to refine. And so at that point, if they wanted to provide additional feedback, I would want them to come to the equity committee to make that feedback. The work should be done in committee. It's pretty big when it goes up to the council, and it's not meeting the standards of full council, it should come back to the committee.
But the other folks, so it's a straight up or down, and if it's down, it means. But if he has a suggestion or an opinion, we'll then give that feedback to this group and we'll take it from there. I don't have a preference, I just want to be clear because I've seen how it's worked in the past, so.
But that's something to piggyback off of that thought. I mean, like, Joe was saying, when we ever get there, like, it's always gonna be constantly developing and more intricate and stuff like that. So I think there's a space that we kind of need to be open to say, this is a living kind of fluid work in terms of definition.
That's a great point, and that's something I think we can definitely emphasize in the report to the council, that these are working definitions. The equity committee will, be still doing ongoing refinement at whatever time period makes sense, kind of annually, semi-annually. We can incorporate that into our work plan.
Yeah, I think it's setting up an expectation of the definite is impossible.
Could we also, since it is a working definition document, maybe ask the board if there are any additional terms to add to it? Because I think these terms just came up in the equity, right? They didn't come in the larger council meeting. And I don't know if maybe somebody has something additional to add to that list.
I think for this go around, we
Yeah.
wouldn't ask them in the meeting to provide additions before approving, but we could say on our update schedule in 2024, we'll be providing our new work plan. We'll note when these definitions will be revisited, and at that point, that's when we would welcome additions or ongoing stuff, because we don't want this to be necessarily something we keep picking away at every single month and dedicating a lot of time to, but we don't want it to be stale. We want it to keep living and breathing. Any additional discussion? Okay, then I think we take a vote. And we have all 4 members here in the room, so that's exciting. So Juno moved, Pat seconded, and I think I'm gonna try and do the roll call from memory here and go alphabetical. So it's Janae. Aye. Juno. Aye. Leslie. Aye.
Aye.
All right, and with that, we will bring it to the full council at the August meeting. Does anybody in this room want to present on the committee report out? Or co-present if you'd like, and support me, great.
Okay, so I'll do that.
All right.
Nobody else wants to, I already, I already put myself out there and said I like talking about this stuff, so.
Wonderful, okay, so we'll definitely connect, and happy to lend whatever support.
Thank you, yeah, I always appreciate the support.
Okay, I'm experiencing massive confusion for a minute. Hold on. I'm trying, I can't figure out. Okay, hold on. I know what's going on. Sorry, guys, just having some technical issues here.
You want to take a 5?
God. Okay. Great. So now I'm going to share my screen and now I'm going to sit down. Hopefully this is going to make sense. What, how am I? Oh, hold on. I know what's going on. Sorry, guys. I'm going to log out here and I'm just going to come right back.
If folks didn't hear before, we're taking a quick 5-minute break while we deal with some technical difficulties. So break until 2:50, just 5 minutes. Sorry, everybody.
have the audio right in here. Okay. Yeah, let me check and make sure. I think that's right. Okay.
Okay, can folks hear us? We're just about to restart. See a thumbs
Okay.
up. Thank you.
All right. Okay, I think we're ready. So thank you. Apologies for the slight confusion over here. So I want to recap real quickly. It feels like it's been 6 months that we've been doing this, but we've been working on key messages that relate to our goal of essentially creating more sort of a communications campaign really for the community so that people understand how to connect with homeless services so that we can sort of level the playing field, at least from the very beginning, making sure that people know. Because we're still running into people that don't know what services there are, they don't know about 211, they don't know about care centers, they don't know about CORE. In looking at our data, we've decided to focus more specifically on Latina population because we're seeing that we aren't seeing as many people accessing services as we would expect, knowing what we know about the population in our community. So we think that we're guessing, maybe part of it is communication that people don't know about it. We're going to start with that. As part of the communications, we talked about wanting to make sure we address common questions and fears and set some reasonable expectations. So you'll see a lot of that when we get to the key messages. And then there's this sort of two populations that you'll see us talk about: the people actually experiencing homelessness who need services, and then amplifiers. Right? So we've talked a lot about amplifiers of essentially people connecting with or working with people who might need service. So there's been like multiple times that we've met together in different configurations to go through some of these messages. I've also been in touch with our communications team at the county, and they are going to be the ones that are going to like help us execute the pretty shiny finished products. And their recommendation was that we actually be as narrow as we can about focusing really on Latina. We've had this sort of broad, initially it was like, we want to make sure everybody knows. And then as we've done this work, we've sort of gotten more and more clear that Latina folks are the folks we want to focus on. So I just want all that context before we stop sharing this, and I'm going to share a Word document that we last worked on in a working group. So we've had a working group, we've had a couple actually. So what I'm hoping to do today is to have this group really narrowed down to like 2 options for each. So we have like message 1, and what I have in the orange is sort of like, what are we hoping to accomplish with this message? Like, what do we want to get across? And then underneath are the different options about how we say it. So there's 5 or 6 messages for each population, meaning people with lived experience and amplifiers. We won't necessarily have all of these statements on a flyer or on a poster, but we've talked a lot about like, do we have videos? Do we have a website? Like, this is sort of the big, what is the big picture? What are the key things that we want somebody to understand? We will get to the like drafting of documents and the images and all that stuff is sort of the next phase. But right now we're just trying to make sure we're all aligned about like, what do we want people to know? So for the first set of key messages, basically, we want to make sure we're capturing the attention of the people we're trying to capture, right? So we want to get the attention of people struggling with housing or homelessness, but we want to figure out how to do that in a way that's not stigmatizing. So
Jamie,
yeah,
can
go
you
ahead.
zoom in? Can you zoom in real quick, please? Yeah. For some reason, Zoom has done an update, and the option to pinch the screen so it can get zoomy bigger on my screen
no.
is not an option. It's not an option anymore. So thanks
I'm
for
sorry.
zooming in. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll also add that these are posted in the packet. So if for some reason, like what I'm showing you is not working very well, this document is in the packet. So if that works better for you, you can pull that up too. So there's a number of people that are like in this meeting that have been part of this. So I'm just going to give some basics, but feel free to like jump in and correct or add stuff. So basically these 6 are what these groups have culled down as like the favorites. And what I'm hoping we can do with this group here today is cull down to like 2 options that we might then kind of field test with the actual targets for all of these. So remembering that we're trying to connect with Latina folks. We like that the first, and we'll work with translators. And also do some work, not just with like the official county health translators, because a lot of the information feedback I've gotten is like, that's fine and good and very grammatically proper and highfalutin, and people are like, that is not, you're not talking to me. If that doesn't compute for me. So we're starting with the English, we'll get to the Spanish, but at least the key message. So take a look at these 6. What I'm gonna do is just make notes in here. Are there any of these? And what I actually might do is for each of the council members, that like committee members, like get your top 2. I'll just take a minute and sort of the hey you on the top of the flyer or in the beginning of the video, or how do people know that we're talking to them? And that we're talking to them because we have something to give them, maybe help their issue with them.
So as a lived experience person,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing that comes to mind for me reading all of those is I'm not eligible. I don't know why, I guess it's either
Mhm.
resources or just these things, and then we call them the number.
Yep.
It's something that you need to have in order to be eligible. So it still doesn't convey immediate, like addressing the immediate need or being able to like, yes, a yes, when you call the line.
Okay.
Or reach out.
Yep.
So I don't know, like, that's just my first impression, putting myself back in those situations. That, yeah, I would still be turned off from calling.
Yep. Is there anything that would capture your attention, or like something that you would see and be like, that's worth the effort?
Honestly, just laying out, are you this? Are you that? Do you have this? Do you like literally the eligibility criteria or something that I identified personally? Do you have children? Do you, I don't know. So something that just, my answers are yes, yes, and yes, that really connect with the resources and services that are out there that are true to be able to house me or lead me in the right direction. That says I will have shelter tonight, or I will have shelter for the full week or something like that, especially with children. So in my mind, it's more about me being able to identify personally with more yeses when you're asking me, or if I'm looking for help when you're asking me, do I need help?
One of the things I'll mention that we've talked about as sort of like the materials, one of them will be a frequently asked questions document that may be able to incorporate some of those things, like, because I think the tricky part actually is like nobody, so actually we're going to get to that. The second message is like what to expect, and part of it is they're going to ask you all these questions to figure out what the best option is, but really it's like, what are you eligible for? But I'm wondering if there's a way to capture that up front. Like this, I think there's this baby help for you was one of the ones where we were like, we don't know for sure that we have something for you, but we might. It was a call.
Yeah.
What am I hearing you say? Like, unless you tell me there is something, I don't even.
That's really,
Yep.
I'll find it on my own.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people who are self-sufficient in that manner, where it's like, I have to find somewhere to sleep tonight, really just, I don't have 2 hours to get on the phone.
Yep.
Don't call this person, call this person, call this person. The sun is going down. I need somewhere safe to stay. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I'm just putting myself in those shoes again. And that's the feedback I get, I personally would.
So this was one of the ones that came up, because you said safety, and that's come up in a couple other conversations. The one, don't feel safe, need a place to sleep. One of the challenges, so this is the thing we're always trying to balance in these conversations, is conveying that there's hope and there might be something, but not overpromising. So this is where the like, well, yeah, everybody needs a place to sleep. That's why they're reaching out. Do we have that for everyone? No. So then how do we manage that false hope?
Yeah.
And we still haven't come up with the answer.
But if we're focusing on Latin A, I do know like when we talk about immigration status or legal, should we say immigration or should we say undocumented?
This was some of the feedback we've gotten, and that's, I think, where we're gonna tinker. So what did you say that you?
Undocumented or immigration? I think
Well,
immigration.
wasn't the discussion that undocumented meant other folks, not just,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, so we were talking about like folks maybe that the gender on their documents doesn't match their gender identity, or doesn't match all the way across, or their names don't necessarily match. The one thing, and this is, I'm hearing the communications team in my head now, after our last meeting, which is like, pick one target, pick a focus, and like make it more narrow, because what I after our last working group meeting, I sort of gave them all this, and they were like, that's great, but that's still too broad. So I think if we're gonna keep this real specific focus on Latin A, and what I'll say is like, this will be the start. And this will give us a template for how to like then maybe target other populations. So I hear your question about which language do we use.
What's more common now?
I think we're gonna do some more drilling down. So we have all these amplifiers, we've identified people with lived experience, so we'll go ask them.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the field testing, like which word is better?
Right.
It's a good question.
And when you say regardless of legal status, legal status means.
Yes, with reentry, that's a
Yes.
really good point. Oh, that's so interesting. I hadn't even caught that.
And I remember we talked about undocumented also meaning, also kind of sharing meaning with the document readiness
Yeah.
as well.
Okay. So I hear you, Janae. None of these really. Do you have any other suggestions for like
I'm
a statement?
fishing in my
That's
mind.
fine, you can take your time.
Because it is difficult. And
I
then,
know, we've been doing this for weeks.
yeah, it's, I
hard.
don't know, like, it's hard to know a person like me who's very self-sufficient would encourage, like, what would it say to pick up the phone? and say,
Yep.
That's what we call it.
Yeah, and some of the, like, some people say don't even use the word homeless because they don't identify as homeless. So it's not gonna, this is the whole thing, is like, what is gonna catch your attention and let them know that we have something for them. That's not gonna turn them off. They're gonna recognize themselves, and it's gonna be accurate. As accurate as possible, knowing like, we're not gonna capture everyone perfectly, but anybody have strong thoughts of ones that they particularly like or don't like in this bucket?
I think I might have talked about it in the working group, but I kind of like the combo one.
This one?
Yeah, and maybe it needs to be a bit more fine tuned, but I like the idea of the both it kind of being like a pull in and also a brief explanation of what's coming, because then, you know, it could catch somebody's attention. And they're like, oh, okay, well, you know, somebody might see this sheet and see like, don't feel safe, or, you know, might see something like on there and be like, well, okay, I'm not gonna look at the whole thing, because like, I know this is not gonna be applicable for me. But like, if you, like, I like having that sort of dual purpose intro.
language of like experiencing or at risk of homelessness. This is what we have on our current flyer. So we could keep that language. But I'm trying to figure out, we've gotten feedback from a lot of people, and especially like doing interviews for different things where people said like, I didn't even know I was homeless. I was sleeping on a bench, or I was sleeping in a car, but I didn't think of myself as homeless. So what's the cue?
I mean, really, when we really come down to assessing someone, we ask them like, do you have a place of residence? Or do you have like more like, do you have an address that you receive mail at? I think it's just that clear of what defines someone being homeless in a sense. So what I know what we do in our assessing is, asking, are you able to stay there more than 30 days or something where it associates with the lease or associates with like, timeline where somebody can give you a couch, but it's not forever, So maybe it's just that direct in certain senses of like really identifying like you are unhoused, or after 30 days you're unhoused. Do you have a, what is it called, like a permanent? That's what it's usually referred to. We have a permanent place of residence.
Joe put in the chat, what about the word? That can line up with.
Yeah. And then to the other questions you asked me, Jamie, to me, I think asking straight up, do you need assistance with housing? Like, cause whatever that is, I may have a voucher, I may, just I may have issues with my legal status in terms of, I need, other assistance in housing, I can't go to public housing, so on and so forth. So maybe it's just as simple as, do you need assistance with housing, like to be the navigation of housing or shelter.
So that helps me to say that number 4 would fall right behind number 7. Do you need help with housing?
Yeah.
Regardless of legal status or documentation, everyone deserves help with housing.
Yep. And I really appreciate your point. I love the way that these words can mean multiple things. Like when we've been talking about legal status, we've been thinking solely for immigration, but there's a lot of
I'm going to chime in real quick and make it personal. It's interesting to me because what I'm hearing in my peer support brain and my lived experience kind of advisory brain here is we're trying to figure out the worth. The person experiencing the homelessness, they have like this self-worth factor that they don't even know what they need. Like they're not even aware of what they need. And what we're trying to do is to make them realize, like, you're in a situation, you may not realize the situation that you're in is serious, and there is actual help out there. Like, if somebody doesn't identify with that statement, everyone deserves help with housing, like that statement, if that doesn't resonate, like, then somebody doesn't see their self-worth as being anyone. They're like, oh no, not me. I'm not everyone. I'm not anyone. I don't deserve that. So, because I'm sitting here and I still need help, but it's just weird. So we're just trying to get to that pinpoint of worthiness of the person experiencing homelessness. So yay us. That's it.
Yay.
Thank you for bringing that up, Joe. When I look at need and do you need, that's a tough statement. Do you need? And for those that don't know what they need, but no, I don't need. I'm happy where I'm at.
I'm just gonna go do it myself. Like
Exactly.
that statement, that just that broke my heart. Like that's what we do. We just go do it ourselves. We don't need that help. But yeah.
or possibly can we help you with housing?
And I don't have the words fully formed, but I think what I'm hearing from this conversation is there might be folks who won't accept help because they don't feel like they deserve help. And so how do we kind of get to the, are you even in like the contemplation stage of accepting
Yeah.
help? Like, can we make an offer that will lure you in some way to try it out?
And I'm not feeling like the district help can be, I think is what I'm hearing, can be coming like multiple different ways. Like some people may be like, well, I don't deserve it, you know, because of XYZ thing I did, or maybe like I don't deserve it because I don't qualify for this. You know, this is not something that's for me. Even though they might think that this, you know, this is great, and they might like be consuming information, they might then be like, yeah, this is not for me, so pass on to here.
We hear that story a lot, like, oh no, someone else deserves it more.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the statement "you are deserving," like, can that just be a statement? You deserve housing.
I really appreciate, Jamie, your framing of this, like, around stages of change, because I keep forgetting, like, I think so if I just step way, way, way back, the point of this campaign is to encourage people to take an action. The action we want them to take is to call 211 or go to a care center. So I have to remember, and I think this is it, we got to figure out, like, are we focused on the pre-contemplators who aren't even sure, as we said, like, there are folks that are like, either I'm cool in my encampment, I don't actually want anything different, fine. I think our focus, our target is really the contemplators, the people that are like, this isn't working for me, I want something else, I don't know what to do, I need something.
That's right.
I think is really our target as we're having this conversation. Is that true? Do you feel like that's?
Yeah, in a sense, because those who want it or know what they want, go after it. Like they know where to go, or they're in a direction of going towards it. They already are at that place of I need it. So yeah, I mean that's how I see most times.
And we're gonna ideally make things that are shareable so that like you're ready for something, but I'm not. So like I'm like, here, I got this, I don't want it, but I can tell I am cued to the fact that this is actually something that is maybe for me, but definitely for you. Yeah. Okay.
Wow, that resonates really, really good. I love it.
So going back to trying to narrow down, and I know this is like pulling teeth. We have, so this conversation about need versus want is really interesting. Can we help you? So if we're thinking about like the populations we work with, what language do you think is going to resonate the most in that? Again, how do you cue without victimizing people? Because our very first flyer had like really pitiful pictures, and a lot of folks were like, no, do not. That is not how I want to be portrayed. We had the word struggle in early versions. Oh, yeah.
I was just going to mention the flyer that I had sent you that Concord came out with. And I don't know, I'm like, I wonder if this campaign, when we help to, I don't know. Because the coloring, I'm just curious on where they came up with it. Who was involved in the discussion when they made that flyer?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Unclear. Okay, so I'm going to leave this for right now. I want to move on to some of the others just to make sure we have some more discussion. So the second one, the action that we want them to take, I think this one is pretty straightforward. We want them to call 211, and they can either talk to somebody there and or get to a core team or go to a care center. And what we're trying to capture too is like what's a little bit about what's going to happen. So there's like learn more, start a conversation, discuss options. This idea that like it's the beginning of a process, you're not just gonna call them and get something right away. Which kind of tags with number 3. So just want to get your thoughts. Are there any of you that you particularly like or don't like? For number 2.
I like number 4.
I'm in agreement with 4 as well.
I like number 1.
Alright. Cool, okay. Any discussion on this one? Again, it's not like done, this is just what we're gonna like, shop out in the community. Okay, so number 3, and we had lots of conversation about this. Okay, so this is like, we're setting expectations about what's gonna happen when they take the action we've asked them to take. So we want them to know people are gonna be asking them questions. And it's important that the more information they give, the more accurate sort of the response will be, ideally. But we also want to convey, we're not reporting your documentation, your immigration status, or your legal status to anybody.
So I like 2. I just don't like the end of 2.
Yes. So we could just say, the more information you share, the more staff will be likely be able to, and then what's the thing that we,
Help or just or identify resources. Or identify or support. Yeah.
provide for?
But I do like, I do like outlining or that none of this information will be shared outside of the initial conversation.
Just something about confidentiality.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that, your information will be kept confidential. But is that not totally right? Because
I mean, it's
you're
it's
sharing
right
within a
in
system.
that everybody's got all the, you might have release of all those things, but if I were a person coming in and I was like, oh, my information is gonna be confidential, I would think in the same way that like a doctor.
Yep, you're right, and that's not true.
Yeah, whereas this is a COC wide.
Or you will be used only to. Like this, if the information shared will only be used to
I like that.
try to navigate the source, determine, yeah, I don't know, but
To help find the right.
That's a hard one.
I know, this is why we keep like, chipping away at these.
I definitely can say from like my point of view from working with my peers and other youth, and there's a lot of youth I've worked with have a lot of, like, I guess, animosity like towards the system.
Yeah.
A lot of them feel as if that like the system actually does not want to benefit them or help them, and that fear of like just the idea of knowing that your information is going to be shared, you're like, oh shoot, like they're going to get me. Like if I put myself back into the system, they're going to have me on file or whatever. So this is a hard like place for me to like think about how we word this without kind of triggering that fear that people might have.
That's kind of why I don't like number 2 actually, because it sounds like exactly like someone who would want to exploit the statement.
Right.
Well, if you share more, then I'll get you something.
Right.
Like it sounds kind of like a trade-off. And I would react that way, like, oh really? That seems like a very obvious kind of ploy.
I'm not feeling number 1. staff will ask you questions to understand what you need. Documentation status is not shared with anyone. I'm stuck on that need. A person will ask you questions to understand what you need. And that's telling a person what they need after a few questions, as opposed to coaching them into coming up with their own solution or options, I'll say, that they could come up with to support their situation.
The staff will ask you questions to find solutions for something, because I think that's what's bothering too, is like, we kind of know what they need, they're calling us because we said that we can help them with housing.
Well, the need may be housing, but the underlying needs may be mental health, drug and alcohol. I mean, there's so many other needs, so.
And that's
Help you navigate. Help you
Well,
navigate.
yeah, and I have a question. So this portion here, what we're trying to figure out part?
How we're gonna tell them when they.
No,
take the
scroll up.
action.
Could you
Okay.
just scroll up a little bit? Because there's a word right there, that one, it says, yeah, the expectation. So we're setting that expectation as the two of you in your position. What is the expectation? Like, is it different than what's here? I think that's what my question is. Is the expectation different than what's here?
So I think the expectation I would want to set is that when people call, they're gonna have to answer questions, and those questions are being asked not just for funsies, but to help folks be matched with the available resources.
So I like that part, match.
Right, match.
Matching with, yeah.
And
maybe
That's it, that part.
So staff will gather information to match you. So it's kind of.
With the appropriate resources. There we go. We're getting
Good probing question, Joe.
I like that.
That was the journalist in me. That was the journalist in me. Yeah.
And when we say gather information from you, like, because I don't want them to think like, oh, you're gonna go look up my records. Like, what do you mean you're gonna gather information on me?
Well, what's another word for gather where we just, it doesn't sound like data information, like we're not collecting
Asking
data.
questions. Is asking questions okay? Like, that is literally what's gonna happen.
Staff will ask questions to match you with possible resources.
I think like, I mean, that conveys what we want to convey, right? Like, I mean, we think we should probably workshop it more, but I feel like that combines, you want everybody to understand expectations, call in, ask questions, not for funsies. And, you know, they'll match you with the resources. That would be good. And I think I like this kind of pivoting in the thought process for this section, because I kind of realized that like, it reaffirms the idea that our objective is not necessarily to, you know, for the people that this reaches to like directly put them into a program or a system or something. We want them to call 211 or go to a care center, which that outcome may not always end up with them being, you know, going further along in the system of care. So I like this kind of pivot of, because some people might come because they're curious, you know, and
Okay, I feel like we landed on one. Go team, we're picking up speed. Okay. Then message 4 is really about helping set expectations. Like, you're not gonna call 211 and they're gonna be like, cool, I have an apartment for you to move into right now. Most people probably don't think that, but we want to set some expectation that it might actually take some time. So how do we want to say that? Getting help may take time, but we're here to help. Some services may take time to access, but people are here to help. The sooner you reach out, the sooner we can explore options. Okay.
like 3 of the most.
Sorry, thank you.
I like to. And
Oh, Alex, we have the key here. Sorry. If anybody needs the bathroom key, it's behind the door, hanging on a thing. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. It's on the, right behind the door.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Number three.
I like 2 and 3 because I like that it's, you know, some services may take time to access, you know, that's very true, but also hopefully there will be a person there to receive you on that end. And that's kind of, I think we kind of touched on that in the working group a little bit, that like just having a person who you can talk to about this, that's not just a phone robot or, you know, a website and you're just like sweeping for opportunities can be impactful. And I like 3. I feel like 3 kind of captures. It kind of creates a sense of like, yeah, I like 3. I think 3 is the one that we, yeah, sorry. 3's good.
I would take the but out of 2, but kind of leads to negativity.
Yeah. What if we like this?
I would say we, not people.
Some services need to take time to access.
And we are here
Yeah.
to help.
And we're here to help.
That's good.
What are your options?
Yeah, like 2, with that rewording.
Part of the thing that I'm getting from number 3, and I don't know if others are, you know, like it puts
Pressure.
pressure, it puts
Yeah.
onus a little bit of like, if you don't do this fast, then like.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Which like,
Yep.
isn't 100% untrue, right? Like there's a lot of personal accountability and all that, but it's also, we're building trust here, so I don't know that we want to lead with it.
I feel it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess like that's what I was gonna say earlier. I liked it because it was honest, but at the same time, I didn't think about the fact that it is kind of being like, you know, this is your one-time opportunity
Right.
kind of
Yeah,
deal.
yeah.
like,
Why didn't you
yeah.
call sooner anyway?
Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, maybe we do need to rework that a little bit.
I remember asking this in the workshops, but who is we in these statements?
Yeah.
I just think people's like so unfamiliar, like people wait, like people. It doesn't really, but if we're literally conveying a message coming from us to them, I know we don't know the we, but I just in a word association, it's more comforting to know we is kind of wrapped around in care versus people. It's like, so you be telling me I could just call some random person.
So we,
Yes,
is the continuum of care.
yeah.
It's the whole continuum of care. It's gonna be branded with the continuum of care logo. Yes.
Cause it's like you're outsourcing me, like you got enough outsourcing as it is, you know, I don't know, it just, people sound outsourced.
So
Joe-
we build this community,
Yeah,
this community.
yeah.
Joe, does that answer your question about the we? Like, it's really the continuum of care, which is like the whole system.
Yeah, I know. And that's the point I'm trying to get at. I know it's the system, and that's exactly what I was trying to get at, because we sounds very personal, but the we in this statement is systematic, because we're trying to build trust with these folks. Yes, but they have to go through that systematic process. And they're not going to build that. I don't know. I mean, we puts in the humanitarian side of things, yes, but what they need to do is to deal with the system, and the system doesn't have that humanitarian factor.
But Joe, do you remember what I always say?
I know, but
What's
see,
the
this is
system?
the thing. The system is
People.
made up of people, but people are flawed, bro.
course.
People are flawed. People, I mean, I don't know. I'll just keep
I feel
asking who we is. It's systematic we.
But I think that's what goes back to the pushback, because it is systematic,
Yeah.
but there's no way to get around it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I don't think, like, we still, I think, trying to identify that, because if we're really targeting people who already feel like the we is systematic, so they do their own thing, their people would be even worse,
Mhm.
because stranger for real. Like, at least in the system, you know the system.
Mhm.
Right?
know.
You know the system, but people's like, so it's a new entity where it's just like, okay, so who are these people or what's this system? That's the interpretation I get from people.
What if we said something like, I mean, because I like how personal he is. I also completely get what Joe is saying. And also, I also get the other end of it of people is a bit too, like, yeah, just like you're gonna connect me some random person who lives, another state or something, like, but maybe like, some like our teams or like, something along those lines. Because then it captures like, it's a little bit personal, and you're not just talking to some random person. I don't know, but then you lose the whole, it's kind of building community part, but.
I like the term team though, because it like denotes that there might be multiple people involved, like people are working together to do this. And it's not just that you're getting like assigned a personal
Dispatch.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Some services may take time and our team is here to help.
I like that.
Yeah. Our team or teams?
It could even be our teams are here to help.
Yeah, our teams are. Yeah, because I mean that puts it in the multitude of how the system works. I mean that clears up my whole who's we factor. That's beautiful. Because it's going to be multiple people involved. It's like a living organism. So that works.
Okay, and, yeah, go ahead.
Just because I don't know, right? Does our sense of team that we have a kind of common understanding of in this room, does it translate the same to the Latinate
Ooh.
cultural population?
Yeah.
I just don't know. But we
It
can
will
let
depend on how it's
the-
translated. Yeah.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
is it gonna be a kid or playing soccer? Like, what,
Right, right.
Yeah, but you figure out the right word.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I just don't know.
Family windows, different term for it.
Yeah.
Word for it.
You'll have to be careful with that. with the way we
Absolutely.
translate all that.
Yeah, we'll have the health services translation and then we're gonna
Yeah,
take, like, I was about to say actual people. There are actual people that work translation services.
You're not going to use AI.
No, oh my God. No. There are many things that may be useful for, I don't think this is it. So then the last thing that we've been talking about is like making sure that we convey that there is hope, because we have this right before that is like, good luck, it's gonna take a really long time. But we also want to convey, and this is where I think we can do some work highlighting. We have a lot of successes in our system of care. And I think there's ways that we can highlight, and this is where we like get into videos, or we can get into little like one-pager things where people can see these stories of, somebody calling 211 and then they are in their house, or, showing what is actually, that there actually are people getting something.
And we have those success stories that have the same languages
Oh,
and
yeah.
look like the
Oh,
people
yeah,
we're trying
totally.
to target.
Totally,
Okay.
yes, that is definitely, like, we have that in our other notes, like, for sure, and when we get to that, there's a lot more to think about. But this is just the, like, how are we saying in like, yes, there's hope, and here's how you can learn more about what that was. I'm gonna give lots of highlights to say that. People are getting and staying housed, learn more here, and here would be whatever the thing is. People are getting help. And then this number 3 was more a note around like what kinds of things we might want to highlight, so not just like somebody got housing, but they also, like you said, Pat, right? People often have very complex needs. So part of what we're doing is connecting people to all the things that they need so that they can have their best lives and live in the best housing situation possible for them.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did I interrupt somebody?
No.
The learn more here.
Mhm.
What's here?
Yeah.
Where is it going to take them? And I see a QR code. I don't know if we've had that conversation, but that whole find out more here. But where would it go? Where would it take them?
I
What's
think
the
I
here?
probably a website that has like a hub that's got success stories and probably videos, maybe some visuals.
Oh yeah. Okay,
I
great.
don't know
Because I
what
was
that
like,
is yet. Yeah.
I was hoping that we weren't going to send them to like 211, but this
Oh,
is
no,
that
no, no.
message. Oh, I got you. Okay, yeah, for sure. This is
Yeah.
where they would go see the video or a YouTube thing. Okay, yeah, for
Yep.
sure. That's great. You
What
can even have
about-
multiple on
Yep.
one. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
What about just,
Mhm.
just throwing stuff on the wall?
Go for it, 'cause we're done.
People are getting help or housed or something become a success story?
Mm.
I have a challenge with success
Or
story.
become, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or tell your story, I don't know, but I'm just thinking maybe drawing them in like, you can be next in terms of
Yeah.
like receiving help.
Yeah, you can be our next success story.
So help me,
Mhm.
in my mind,
Mhm.
define what a success
Yeah,
story is in
exactly.
this plight of individuals that are.
Well, it's the wraparound services, right? Like it's being able to become stabilized, which is which is wraparound, in my opinion. The full success is receiving all of the needs that need to be met in order to become stabilized.
I mean, I'll say in the success stories that we put out, sort of in the COC newsletter, it's not always like someone was living in their car and now they live in a house.
Right.
It's
Okay.
like they went into recovery, like they got drug and alcohol, and now they're working towards reuniting with the tribe, or now they're working towards housing. Like I think this idea again of like the stages of change, like there may be multiple successes along the way. And housing is our ultimate dream, but like I think your point is well taken. And I think we would want to highlight, like maybe somebody got their diabetes under control because they got into a shelter.
All of those are successes, don't get me
Right.
wrong,
Mhm.
they're all successes, but when you say success
Yeah.
story,
But I
you're
think it's
looking at.
in the eye of the person, right? Is what, because I think that's part of the question, but what is success to you, or what is the goal? Or like when you do the assessment, or when you do the drill down, and what's the purpose of this call today? This is what I want. These are the things that I want. So I think it's just enough. To me, I think it's the conversation and they set it up. Like, I need employment, I need counseling, so that's their success.
What do you think?
I hear all of this, and at the same time, a success is they were on time for their appointment.
Yeah.
I mean, that alone.
Yes.
So how are we capturing a
Mm.
success story? And what does that mean?
Mhm. How do
I
we
mean,
make
it's
this straight?
a snapshot in their journey.
Yes.
And when you deem someone a success story,
Mhm.
should they have challenges that take them backwards?
Mhm.
Shame is built up because they were once identified as successes.
Totally.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I have the challenge there with
Yeah.
how we can articulate that you're doing a great job
Yeah.
without putting you on a pedestal that you've made it. You've
Success is
arrived.
not perfection,
Yeah.
Exactly.
and it's not a finite state. You don't reach success and then you're done. It could be ever changing. I like that a lot.
This is great.
That's just something I needed to hear in general.
Say it again. I need to hear it too. Success is not perfection or finite. Okay. This is super helpful.
So
yeah.
I'm gonna go back. I love this whole conversation and I really love what Pat's saying because it hits home for sure. I was like, ooh, successful. I took a shower this week. Yay me.
Yay.
But you know, the convey that message of hope. Is because I think the hope is the different versions of success. I think the hope is actually knowing that we could step behind and still be successful. I think that's that message of hope.
Is this capturing it, Joe? Like you can struggle and still move forward? Is that, say again what you said?
I don't know. It's recorded.
Right, exactly.
I don't know what I just said, but I'm just kind of, that's the message of hope is what everybody's talking about. That you could take a step behind, you could, but yeah, all of that. I just love where we are with the discussion. That's great.
So I want to pivot quickly to what we were really thinking about is like capturing the attention of people who need the services directly. I think the one that I want to make sure that we capture is if we're talking to the amplifiers. So what we came up with in the last working session was, so say like you guys, right? Like you might be amplifiers. So if you say you didn't necessarily work exclusively with people experiencing homelessness, what would cue you that this information is important if you have a client seeking housing? So we had helping someone in a housing crisis was one of the tags that we might use for the amplifier. Say basically, if you're trying to help somebody, here's some information that will be useful for you to give to them. We've had lots of debates about like crisis and homelessness
Right.
and all the language.
Say that question again.
Yep. So let's say this is aimed at somebody who works at the food bank.
Mhm.
We want them to know if maybe they have people that are coming in that are just low income, but maybe they have people coming in that are unsheltered or about to lose their housing. We want them to know, oh, I need to pick this up and hold on to this to give to Jane, because I know she's struggling with housing. So what's the like cue or the hook for them, for that population, and amplifiers? The people helping other people that aren't necessarily direct homeless service providers, but they're working with people who might be homeless and could benefit from our smorgasbord.
And these are folks that on our list, they work at food banks,
Yeah.
they work at churches, they work
Yeah.
at lots of different places
Yeah.
where you might see folks who have housing facilities.
Do you know or have met someone who struggles with housing support?
But are you worried about someone?
Mm-hmm.
Struggles with that?
Yeah.
Worried about a neighbor.
Yeah.
Are you saying you're worried about someone who struggles with housing?
Maybe something about how it's the system might have support to help.
Mhm.
In this case, not just, and maybe because we're targeting, this is like targeting amplifiers
Mhm.
who are for the most part into like a part of the system in some way, shape, or form. Saying that we might have resources we can tap into, or we can help with navigating like caseload kind of thing, like, being able to utilize some of these services in order to make the job easier. But I feel like something that communicates like, we have all these resources, you know, send people our way kind of thing. I don't know how to say that.
So just a quick thing, so like, we're gonna give them the same directive, but it's help them connect. So, and we're not just saying like, they should connect, we're like, you as the helper, as the amplifier, help them connect. So either you help them get to the care center, or you help them call 211. And then we talked a little bit more about like, what they can expect.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Do most amplifiers know where to go?
That's what we're gonna call them.
Okay, so then it's, maybe the question is simply, do you know where to find housing resources?
Mhm.
Or do you know how to, and do you know how to support someone
Yeah,
with housing resources
or housing needs.
or housing? Yeah, the need word.
I knew you were gonna say that.
The need word.
Or, I don't know, yeah, but maybe, I don't know.
We're close.
The other thing too, we have to realize is that these amplifiers don't even realize that they're amplifiers.
Right.
They don't even know that they are that soft tissue that, you know, will connect people to the system. They're not even aware of it.
Mhm.
So getting their attention and making them aware of it, it's hard to figure out how to say that.
Or you can help, you also can help. Something that, again, just going up on the wall.
I feel like part of the similar thing with, like we talked about earlier with amplifiers, is that somebody might think, well, I do know how to do this already. So like, why do I need X, Y, Z thing?
Uh-huh.
Or, you know, like, I'll just do it myself. You know, I know it, I've done it before, I know what's best. I mean, in the case of like a neighbor helping a neighbor, you know, they might be like, you know, I'm just gonna, you know, give them a few bucks, help them get to the food bank or whatever, till they get on their feet. When that's like, you know, maybe relocation or rapid rehousing services that the county could offer.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about, like, would an amplifier be like, yeah, this is good, have in my repertoire, but I can probably do the same thing myself, kind of thing.
Yeah. So this is actually, what you're saying, you know, makes me think like, we would say like 211 or care center may have, like, why, we're not conveying why we would want them to do that. As you're saying, they don't necessarily know what they're being, what's available. That's great. Thinking about that person that's like, well, I'm patching things together, and that's what I know to do. That's what you do. Yeah, but there's this whole other thing that they might not know about.
Find out what's available,
Mhm.
where, and then website,
Maybe or help them connect it toward our care center to find out what's available. Uh-huh. Mhm. Okay. And this is another one where we'll talk to the amplifiers. And again, we're looking specifically at Latinx, like amplifiers working with Latinx. And part of, to be transparent, part of where I always get stuck are these definitions of homelessness, and like some of the data we have about Latinx folks that may be in like severely overcrowded situations, but might not meet our definition of homelessness. And so can we even bother teasing that out? But there might be resources for them in our system. Trying to like, again, this goes to like, is this the right language? Housing crisis, what's the right cue? Let me just see what we said. Oh, this was about safe housing. Okay, so we might work with this one a little bit more with amplifiers on like what would be the right message for them. Okay, I want to time check. We have 10 minutes left. We made awesome progress on this. What I want to check in about is the next council meeting. No, next committee meeting is August 8th. And I wanted to take a minute to just, are there things, do we feel like we're at a place to have another official committee meeting, which would mean we're doing official business, maybe we're voting on some things. Are there good vision for what would be on the agenda for the next meeting? I know it's kind of a broad question.
Feels like we want to take this back to working group again. To hash out just some of the language and the new things we have. But I know at the same time, we've already done that, a few times now, so. Yeah.
Well, one part we didn't get to was around this next step of sort of the field testing part. So maybe that is like really doing that planning. And clarification surveys, is it focus groups? Do we have folks go into encampments? Like we talked about that, like are there draft materials? So what I can tell you, let me just be real transparent. So when I talked to our communications team at Health Services, they were basically like, this needs to be a lot tighter before we invest all of the energy in drafting stuff. But it kind of feels like this chicken and the egg of like, we can't really move forward until we have some drafted. So I'm gonna go back to them. It may also be like we just as staff, or Joe, I know you're like graphic design, like maybe we just mock some things up just generally, just to like get a feel for what things might look like. And the things at this point are like visually like a flyer and a poster. But then there's this whole other piece that we can talk about, like videos. So what does that look like? But we need to kind of nail down what our messages are. Yeah.
I would like, I'm sorry, there's like an echo, so I'm not sure if you're done talking or not.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd be a little interested in, the feedback with the graphics, but there's the language I think we can work on the language, can't we? Like we can turn this into Spanish language and see yeah, that's the word. Thank you. Get a translation of it. I think we can get that before graphics gets to do what they need to do.
Yeah. So
Is among the amplifiers, is there a group that we could field test it with?
Yep. Yeah, so this is actually that, thank you, Leslie. This is really where I think we're at the point now where we have narrowed down our sort of messages. And I think we need to now go take these out into the world to get some feedback. They're not finished, they're not done. But I think we should strategize how we want to do that and who we want to focus on. And that was part of what I pulled for this meeting, is like we have a list of like 20 different organizations. We have people with experience that have said they're willing to be part of it. So it's what I'm hearing is maybe at this next meeting, plan for getting feedback. And I kind of put in the slides like, who do we reach out to? What do we bring them? How, by when? And then I'm thinking once we get the kind of close to finished drafts, then we come back to them and say, okay, so this is what it's going to look like. It sounds like we need to strategize, like building these stronger relationships with a couple of some key amplifiers and people with experience. Is that what you're thinking, Leslie? Or you envisioning?
Well, I guess I'm thinking maybe we could do this over and over and over and over and over again.
Exactly.
Maybe we've gotten it to the best place that we can as a group, and now we need to put it out there and see what people who would need to carry the message or receive the message say.
Yes.
On the key messages, not even the graphics. but
exactly.
just the
Yeah.
key
Yes,
messages.
exactly.
I guess that's what I'm saying. Is there
Yes.
a group we can start to run that by with?
Yeah, so I have a whole, so in the, I don't think I can pull it up right now, but in the shared, sorry, in the posted
Yeah, that
document,
whole-
there's that list of the amplifiers. And I think there's a bunch of people we're missing. That are particularly working with Latinx population, so I think we may need to do, and that's something we can do, I can do staff, like, reach out to them and kind of do that snowball thing, it's like, okay, so who else do we need to talk to, who are we missing? But to go back to so August 8th is our scheduled committee meeting. So here's what I'll say, our committee meetings require us to be in person, our work groups don't. Do we think that we should be in person on August 8th? And do we think we will, between now and then, have something that we will want to either have a formal vote on or need to have the official business? And it's fine, we can make it happen. Or do we make it like a working group?
Will this be after we get feedback?
I don't think we're gonna be able to get the feedback by then. And I'm thinking what we, maybe one idea is like we have a working group meeting. That's that strategy.
Okay, I think that would be good.
And that way you don't have one in person.
Because then we could still we could have a working group meeting before our agenda time, or before our next meeting, and then we could still hold that meeting if we wanted to. The equity committee meeting, but the working group. Seems like the next steps would be to like get that feedback.
Okay, so working group meeting is gonna be strategy for outreach or right. Not outreach, but I'm getting feedback.
There's also one other thing I wanted to ask about the feedback. So if we are going to be asking people with lived experience to give their, their feedback on this,
Mhm.
I think another really primary point is like, what are we giving them for
Yep.
participating in this process?
Yep.
So like,
And do we need extra support around doing that for people who might be monolinguistically
Mhm.
Spanish?
Yep. we will
Mhm.
have this language piece. So you don't. Yeah, you gotta figure that out.
I want to make a note on a timeline.
Mhm.
We were talking about success stories,
Mhm.
and with looking at this and where we're headed in our season, can we focus the success stories during Homeless Awareness Month?
We can get some, yes.
Yeah, I think that. Oh well, I mean, I think that using Homeless Awareness Month to get the stories,
Yep.
tracking it with timeline.
Yep. Y'all. Okay. What I'm hearing is, you're suggesting that we schedule a working group between now and August 8th.
that's my suggestion, but open to, if it anything.
And then we'll see how far we get. And maybe we'll be ready for a full committee meeting, and if not, then we will make our August 8th meeting another working group meeting. Okay. Mhm. I think that's all. We got through a lot, you guys.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, I love the feedback. I really love the input.
I would say I also love the process. Like the discussion, dialogue. Was good.
Yes, I appreciate this group. I think our work here is done. Any
Yeah, go team.
comments, concerns, and things we need? All right.
Just gotta make sure we can deliver.
No, I just thinking like.
If we get people through the door, we need to be able to deliver.
That's my other thing, right? I'm like, oh, so if we do our job well, then we're gonna have an interesting conundrum.
But it's the right thing for the right.
I know.
Bye, y'all. See you later.
Bye.